Elsie Jensen here. Today we are going to make some biscuits with some sausage gravy, bacon, and eggs for our breakfast today. So I'm going to start out by making our base for our sourdough discard biscuits. So we're going to start out by adding 2.5 cups of all-purpose flour to our bowl. So there's 1. 2 and 1/2 cups. And now we're going to add in 4 teaspoons of baking powder. 1, 2, 3, 4, and then a teaspoon of salt. And then we're going to give it a good stir with a fork to mix it up before we cut in our cold butter. So I'm going to give it a good stir. And then we're going to cut in about 1.5 sticks of cold butter. And the trick is you want to make sure your butter is cold. So I left mine in the fridge, and I'm just going to grab my butter out. Because in order to get your nice flaky layers, you need nice cold butter. And I'm gonna grab a knife. So we're gonna cut in 1.5 sticks, which is 3/4 of a cup of cold butter. And then we'll use our pastry cutter to chop it up finer into it. You could also use a food processor if you wanted, but I find that a pastry cutter works just as good. And I'm just going to chop this off into smaller bits as I'm putting it in here. That will just help me cut it with my pastry cutter a little bit easier. So I'm just chopping up this butter, adding it in here, and then we'll add another 1/2 stick. So it'll be 3/4 cup altogether. But these make the most delicious biscuits ever. And they're fun because you can actually like jazz them up. Sometimes I add cheddar cheese and chives to them, or I'll add like blueberries and sugar and lemon zest to make them. But today we're just gonna have them plain because we're gonna have some bacon and some sausage gravy with them. And there we go. So just 1.5 sticks of cold butter. And then what I'm going to use is my pastry knife, which essentially has a bunch of blades, and I'm just going to cut my butter up into it until all of my butter chunks are smaller than like the size of a pea. Again, you could use a food processor if you wanted, but once you've ever used like a pastry cutter like this, it's pretty easy and it's a lot easier to clean. I find food processors just take up a lot of space in my dishwasher, and I don't enjoy hand washing them, so I use this instead. And essentially what I'm doing is I'm just taking my pastry cutter, or right there, and I'm just pushing it down into the sides of my bowl, and it just chops up the butter into fine pieces for me. And the goal is you just want to make sure that all of your butter is smaller than the size of a pea, because if it's too large, you'll have a big pocket in your biscuit. But if you have smaller, you'll get the nice crumbly, flaky
question. What are you making this morning?
We are going to be making sourdough discard biscuits, sausage gravy, and some bacon and eggs. So just a nice Sunday morning breakfast for the family, and one that gets done pretty quickly. We'll hope to have it done within 30 minutes. I have my oven preheating to 425. That way I can pop them in and they'll bake for about 15 minutes. There we go. And then sometimes I go through, you'll get a little bit of butter stuck in your blades. I'll just clean it out and then continue chopping. But you can see I've already got most of my butter chopped up. And it's a good arm workout. And once you have it, and so we mixed all of our dry ingredients for those who came in later. We had 2.5 cups of all-purpose flour, 4 teaspoons of baking powder, and a teaspoon of salt, and we mixed those together, and then we've cut in 1.5 sticks of butter. Perfect. So now you see how my butter pieces have all been chopped up, and now I just have a kind of a shaggy, crumbly mixture. Okay, now we're gonna get ready to add in our wet ingredients. So I'll take my pastry cutter out, make sure I don't have any butter pieces. And then for our wet ingredients, we have half and half eggs and our sourdough discard. And I like to mix them first, then I'll add them to my dry ingredients. So first we're gonna need 1 cup of sourdough discard. So I'm gonna give it a good stir. And then, just in case you have, sometimes with your sourdough or your starter, you can have some liquid come up to the top. I always like to give it a good stir before I use it. And we're gonna use 1 cup. There we go.
You got another question. What are you making?
We are making sourdough discard biscuits, and then we will make a sausage gravy and some bacon and eggs, just for a good Sunday morning brunch. All of my kids, we've been recovering from the norovirus this weekend, and they're all deciding to get their appetites now. So they all woke up, we're hungry, Mom, we're hungry. Okay, put that, since we're done with our sourdough discard. And then we're gonna add in a half a cup of half and half. You could use milk, but I find half and half just gives it a nicer, creamier, like a denser biscuit, which is nice. So half a cup of half and half. And then we're gonna add in 1 egg. And the trick is we want to mix these ingredients up together before we pour them into our biscuit mix. And that will just help it incorporate easier and make sure that the wet is mixed thoroughly and mixing with the dry. We'll give it a good stir.
You get a question. What's the norovirus?
It's like the worst stomach bug ever. Essentially, it is terrible. It's like an extreme version of it. I will say 2 nights ago, I got woken up in the middle of the night. 4 out of my 5 kids, including teenagers, had thrown up in their beds. That's how violent it is. So no fair warning. It was pretty awful. And everybody got sick within a 6-hour period of it. Our first thought, oh, did we get food poisoning? But we did not, because the food we had eaten with my parents and what nobody else had gotten sick. So it was just a really bad stomach bug. Now that I have my starter and my half and half and my egg mixed together, I'm going to pour it into our biscuit, our flour and butter mix. Gotta get all this. Perfect. And then put this in the sink. And I'm gonna start with a fork to kind of toss it together. And then I will use my hands. You know, the key with the biscuits is you don't want to over mix them, because then you're just gonna get like a really dense lump. You wanna have it more light and kind of push together, because that's gonna give you the flaky layers that you want. So I'm gonna take my fork out.
Can you do a rundown of the ingredients real quick?
Yes. So first we started with 2.5 cups of all-purpose flour, and we mixed in 4 teaspoons of baking powder and a teaspoon of salt, and we kind of mixed those together with a fork. Then we cut in 1.5 cups of butter, not 1.5, 3/4 cups of butter, which is 1.5 sticks. We chopped that into our mixer until the pieces were no bigger than a pea. And then we made our wet, which was 1 cup of sourdough discard with a half a cup of half and half, and then 1 egg. We mixed it together, and now we're mixing them here. And we're just gonna kind of press them and fold them up together, because again, you don't wanna over mix your biscuit thing, because you want them to be light, fluffy, and crumbly. So what I like to do is I mix by folding and pushing. So that gives you kind of your flaky layers in your biscuit. Go. And then I'm simply gonna do this until I have all of my, like the flour crumbs that are on the side have all like incorporated. So just, it's kind of like a knead and a fold. You don't wanna over mix it. You don't wanna do it with like a mixer or whatnot, because your biscuits, you want them to be nice and fluffy and crumbly, you know, in the sense. And then I'm just going to push them out into a nice flat surface, or so I can use my biscuit cutter. Perfect. And you can see you already got, like when I push down, I'm getting these nice flaky layers, which will be perfect in our biscuits because everyone loves a nice flaky biscuit. You can see the layers here popping up. So I've got it pushed it out. Perfect. Now I'm going to put a piece of parchment paper down on my baking sheet, and I have my oven preheated.
What was the milk? Was it half and half?
I used half and half. You can use milk if you want to. I find half and half just leads to a better tasting biscuit. I think because it has a bit more fat content in it, and so it gives you just a nicer, rich biscuit. But whole milk works well. I've never done it with like a milk substitute, like almond milk or whatnot, but I mean, I figured it would probably turn out about the same. And then I'm just gonna use my biscuit cutter, and I'm just gonna cut my biscuits. I'm gonna lay them on my parchment paper. And then we'll bake these in the oven for about 15 minutes at 425. There. And these will be nice, big, flaky biscuits. And then, I don't let any of it go to waste. We're gonna push it back together. I'll cut out some more. This should make about, give or take, you know, 10 to 12 biscuits depending on how big. This is a pretty big biscuit cutter. I would say it's probably like a 2.5 inch one, maybe a 3 incher. But you could do smaller biscuits. They would just bake faster in the oven if you did smaller biscuits. Let's see. And the trick is you want to make sure they're all about the same thickness, because that way they'll all bake uniformly. You don't want to have some biscuits that are thinner than the others, because those will bake faster. And I think I have enough to make one more biscuit here. I'm just gonna hand mold this guy. Perfect, so we made about 11 biscuits here. And I'm gonna go pop these in the oven, and we're gonna bake at 425 for about 15 minutes. And these are great because you can add different ingredients to them. I've made them with cheddar cheese and green onions, and I've made them with blueberries and a little bit of sugar and lemon zest, just to jazz them up. But today we're just gonna have them be the same, just plain Jane's, because we're gonna make a delicious sausage gravy. So I'm gonna wash my hands real quick, and we're gonna start on our gravy. Okay, so we're gonna make a sausage gravy and some bacon, and then we'll cook up some eggs. So I'm gonna turn on my skillet over here to high. These are both non-stick skillets. They're hex clad. I find that they are really good. They don't use Teflon, and they're also scratch proof. I've had them for about 2 years now, almost 2 years, and they have yet to scratch them, which is good. I mean, I'm also very careful, you know, when you use any non-stick surface, you should either use just wood or plastic or silicone coated utensils in it. If you use metal in them, you risk scratching them. So same with my like Dutch ovens. I only use my silicone or wood stuff in them, just because I don't want to scratch the enamel coating on it. So I'm just gonna lay my bacon out, and I'm gonna let it saute up. There we go. This is a pound of bacon, but we'll have some nice sausage gravy and some eggs to go with our biscuits. So I'll have that sauteing and give my hands a quick wash. And now we'll start on our sausage gravy, which I love. I don't know, and sausage gravy is big in the South. It's not so, I never really heard about it growing up in the Midwest. So, but it's delicious. It's simply, you're just gonna fry up some sausage, and then you'll add some flour to make a roux, and then you'll add in some milk. I'm gonna use a half a pound of it, just because I only made so many biscuits. We don't need too much. That means I'll have this left over for another day. And then let me get a spatula out. And I'm gonna get tongs for my bacon. And the trick with the bacon is I start it on high when I'm cooking it, and then I turn it to about a medium once it starts to sweat out the fat. That way you don't burn it, and it can allow it to cook in the fat to get a nice crisp on it. So I'm just gonna break up my sausage here, just like this. And then let it cook over that. And then you can see my bacon's already starting to sweat it out. I'm gonna start flipping it around and just moving it just so I can sweat all the fat out, because you won't get crispy bacon unless you have enough fat in there. And sometimes if you cook it too high without turning it, it will burn. Okay, now we're gonna mix up our eggs for our eggs that we'll cook in just a second. Clean up this, but we have our sourdough biscuits in the oven baking. Get my little area cleaned up a little bit. So, there we go. And now we're gonna break our eggs and give them a good whip. So we're gonna do scrambled eggs. Most of my kids love scrambled eggs. I have one who prefers fried eggs. I prefer fried eggs, but everybody else likes scrambled eggs. And got an eggshell. I always get an eggshell every now and then. I find that certain egg brands, their eggshells crack a lot more than other egg brands. These I think are Costco eggs, and I find that their shells crumble a lot easier. I've never mastered you know how some people can like crack an egg with one hand, but I've never mastered that. I've tried, but it always is a disaster. So I've got, I think we're doing 8 eggs. We get a fork and some garlic salt. Oh, the bacon smells delicious. I'm a proponent, I like just regular original cut bacon. I'm not a huge fan of thick cut bacon because I find that thick cut bacon never gets crispy. It always is a bit chewy. I like thick cut bacon if I'm gonna use it in like a recipe and not have it like straight up as bacon, but more like a flavor, that's fine. But when I'm eating regular bacon, this, I find the original or the thinner cut is the best. Chop these guys up. And this is just a regular original pork sausage. I find just the good old original one, or you could use a breakfast sausage roll, which is pretty much the same as a pork sausage, works well for the sausage gravy. And essentially we're just gonna cook it up until it's fully cooked through. Then we're gonna sprinkle a nice dusting of flour over it so that the fat from the sausage kind of makes the roux. And then we'll add in some half and half to make our gravy and a little bit of garlic salt and pepper. There we go. And the trick is with it, you don't want to have super big chunks in your gravy. Give it a good whip. And to break them up, there are some tricks when you're making scrambled eggs. You can, if you want fluffier scrambled eggs, add a little bit of milk in, and it will make it more fluffy. If you want a denser, rich scrambled eggs, add in an extra yolk, and you'll have a richer scrambled egg. We just do the plain Jane, but my mother loves a denser one, so I'll always add an extra yolk when we make eggs for her. And then my mother-in-law always loves fluffy eggs, so I added milk there. But those are just 2 different ways that you can kind of jazz up yours. Okay.
You got a question, add an extra what? I think she's talking about the yolk.
Yes, an extra yolk. So you would do 6 eggs, and then you would add a yolk to the 7th, and that will give you a richer scrambled egg. And it's just...
so just another egg without the white.
Yes, without the white. So you would separate it. There we go. We've got our sausage sauteing up. I'm going to turn this down just a little bit. Perfect. And essentially we're going to wait until we don't see any more pink on the sausage. And then we have our bacon cooking. I turned my bacon down to like a medium because I noticed it was starting to sweat off a lot. And so now we just want it to crisp up in the fat nice and slowly. Perfect. Looks like our sausage is just about ready for our next. So I'm going to put in about a tablespoon of butter. I'm going to let it melt. I'm going to turn my heat down just a little bit. I'm going to let it melt right in the middle, and then we're going to use some flour. I'll bring it over here. And what we're essentially is we're going to do like a light dusting over our things. So got to wait until our butter melts. And the flour and the butter are essentially going to mix together to make a roux, which is pretty much like the French word for a gravy base. There we go. Because the butter and the flour will come together to make kind of a paste, and then you'll add your liquid, which will be, we'll do half and half in milk, and it will thicken up. And you don't need much flour for this. So now that I have my butter melted, I'm going to spread my sausage out. And I'm just going to do a light dusting. It's going to be about a tablespoon or two over it. You don't want to kind of clop it down too much because then it can get into a ball and be just like a thick glob. You just want to do a nice dusting over it.
Panda just sent you a gift.
Oh, thank you. And then we're going to stir it up and really thicken it. And then I'm going to give a nice little dusting again. Perfect. And now, as it's sauteing, I'm going to pour in a little bit of half and half. And we're going to let it saute, and it's going to thicken up into a nice, you can already see how much it's thickened. And then I use a little bit of half and half in the beginning, and I'll finish it off with some whole milk, simply because that's what we use. We got little ones in the house, so we always have whole milk. You could use all half and half, but I find that this is already a really rich gravy, and so I'll cut it with some milk. But I do like using a little bit to begin with. I think I used about maybe a third of a cup to begin with. There we go. And you just keep adding until we get to a nice, thick gravy type texture. And then I'll add a little bit of garlic salt. I just think garlic salt adds just a little extra flavor to it. You could, if you, some people like to add a little bit of Cajun seasonings to have a little kick to it. You could definitely do that as well. Perfect. There we go. So this is a traditional, I'm going to turn off my heat now, Southern sausage gravy that you would then just dump over your biscuit. Give my bacon a little bit of a turn here. Spread it out. Nice.
As someone posted, they add red pepper flakes.
Yes, yes, you can add a little bit of red pepper flakes. We're pretty mild here. I'm going to add a bit more milk. I can't handle much spice, and neither can anyone else in my family, so we keep it pretty mild. I will sometimes add a little bit of black pepper. There we go. And I'm just going to taste and see if it needs any more spice. My key is taste often, and then you'll know. I think, you know what, I'm going to get a little bit of black pepper because I want a little zing from that. But it doesn't need much. I added about a fourth a teaspoon of black pepper, just enough to give it a little kick. And then I'm gonna give it just a little bit more milk. Because I like mine to be, think about like at Thanksgiving where you have the nice gravy. I don't want it so thick that it's a paste. I want it to be, essentially I'll show you, like this kind of texture, just a thick thing that will stick to your biscuit. Perfect. So I have this guy off. I'm gonna turn him and put him on my warming. We got a warmer right here. And stir here. We can go check on our biscuits and see how they are doing. I think we're about a few minutes left. We'll see if they need a little extra time, and then we're gonna whip up our eggs. So I've got my light on. And oh, look, you can see how much they've popped up. They're almost done. Look at these guys. They're beautiful. I'm gonna just give a quick rotate. I found that my oven cooks hotter in the back, so I like to, at the very end, rotate our biscuits around. Perfect. And we have about 2 minutes on there. So I'm gonna grab out a pan and we're gonna fry up some, saute some eggs, or scramble up. And let me turn on my thing. I'm gonna put a little bit of butter in. Probably like a teaspoon of butter. You don't need much when you're using a non-stick pan. You don't need much butter in it. The trick is, if you don't want your eggs to stick to your pan, you gotta make sure your pan is hot enough to begin with, but not too hot. If you have it on too high, it will stick to it. So you want it to warm up and then cook it over a medium heat. There we go. Wait till that butter melts. I will put my milk back in the fridge. Get my cream. You always want to get those back in the fridge so they don't spoil. Perfect. So we got our sausage gravy. We got our bacon crisping up. And we've got our butter melting. There we go. So I'm going to put in our scrambled eggs. I'm going to add a little bit of garlic salt.
Surprise.
Yes. I find garlic salt just gives it such a better flavor than regular salt. And then some people add black pepper to their eggs. I like black pepper in my eggs, but my kids don't. And, you know, sometimes they'll throw a fit because there's a little parsley flake and they see some green. But I was like, oh, it's fine. Just taste it. Pretend it's not there. There we go. Okay, let me get a spoon out. And just scrape the bottom off of this. And then I hear our biscuits are beeping. So we'll grab those out.
You gotta ask if you're adding cheese to the eggs.
I am not adding cheese to the eggs. My kids do not like cheese in their scrambled eggs. They'll eat cheese in an omelet, but heaven forbid I put it in eggs. Then they're like, oh, what's wrong with these eggs? But you could add like a third cup of cheese in there. If you add too much cheese to your scrambled eggs, it will be really hard to cook up. And you'll want to add it closer towards the end. Look at these guys, beautiful. Some of mine puffed apart, but that will be perfect for our biscuits and gravy. And these ones, my kids will have jam on it.
And those were the ones at the end when you had to push them back
together. Yeah, those are the
together.
ones where I remolded together. I could have forced them together a bit more, but I knew we were having biscuits and gravy. And with biscuits and gravy, we just like to dump it right on top. These will be my ones for my kids who have jam. And it's crazy, we have some strong opinions in this house about jam. Everybody loves strawberry jam except my oldest daughter. She has to have grape, which I personally believe is probably the worst jam in the world. I just never had it growing up. But I think one time I made biscuits like a month or two ago and her world ended when we didn't have grape jam. Oh, so much drama. So it was right before Christmas, so I put a bunch of grape jam in her stocking so she could have her personal supply of grape jam. And we're gonna stir.
What's the difference between jam and jelly?
Jelly is, I will say it's grape jelly, but jelly is made from the juice, while jam is made from a fruit puree. So I guess that's why I don't like grape jelly, I guess. It's because it's made from grape juice, and I'm just not a big fan of grape juice. But that's the difference. You have like the jam and then the jelly and then preserves, which are cooked, like has bigger chunks of fruit in it. I will say, you know what? What's worse than grape jelly, I think, is apricot marmalade. I'm not a fan of that either. But you know, to each its own. If you travel to Europe, apricot marmalade is like everywhere. It's typically what you get. They'll give you a little thing. You're like, oh, don't you have any other one but that? Give it a good stir. And then there's also the debate on how people like their scrambled eggs. Some people like what I refer to as the term snotty, where they're still really, really wet. This is what, like, this is the way my mom likes them. I think she's crazy. But she likes her scrambled eggs snotty and still wet. I like my scrambled eggs more on the dry side, where you have fully cooked them all the way through. But, you know, to each their own. There we go. I'm going to get a nice paper towel.
It's not plastic, it's silicone, and it's heat rated. It won't melt.
Yes, so this is I buy all silicone coated ones, not plastic, because silicone is heat rated for up to 550 degrees. And like you can cook in silicone, but you can't use metal and like enameled surfaces because it will scratch them. My little bacon.
I don't know what that means, but I'll ask. Are those Pampered chef pans? Is that a brand or something?
That's a brand. These are Hex-Clad ones. I think the celebrity that endorses them is Gordon Ramsay. But I just found I asked my brother-in-law, because he's also a big foodie and chef, and he had them. And I was like, how do you like the pans? I've been wanting some new ones, because I had Cuisinart ones before, and I've had just some different brands. And after, they would last about a year before they would start to get scratched up or nicked, because one of my kids would like put a fork in it or cut in it. And so I was like, I want a pan. And I kept hearing that these don't scratch and they're not made of Teflon. And I finally took the plunge to buy them after our kitchen remodel, and they have been wonderful. They are like the best pans ever. Nothing, I have yet to have anything that sticks. They're super easy to clean. So we are ready to serve up. I'm going to use, because this is going to be I love my sausage gravy. I'm going to use this guy, but I will break him apart so you guys can see the nice flaky layers in there. Do you see all those flaky layers? That's from folding the mixture. And then I'm going to give him a nice, good dollop of sausage gravy. We'll have a serving of scrambled eggs. Add in some bacon. And then, for those of you who just like the, make it for my daughter. She likes her grape jelly. I'll make this one for her. You can have it split open, nice in the middle. See how that beautiful, perfect. You can put a little butter on. I'm gonna put a dollop of grape jam on.
And these are sourdough biscuits?
Yes, they're sourdough discard biscuits. And
seems you use the discard more than anything.
Yes, I use the discard on a lot of recipes. Also, I find using a spoon to scoop out your jellies or jams and spreading works so much better than a knife. But this is what we're having for dinner, or for breakfast today. Well, don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks for joining us. We try to do live cooking shows a couple times a day, and kind of show you what we're eating and cooking in our house for our crazy family of 7. Thanks again for joining us. Don't forget to like and subscribe.